Hi, I'm Tina, MSearch's founder and president. Welcome to this episode of Leadership Delivered, where we discuss and unpack the big ideas behind what's happening in business and recruitment today.
Hey everyone, welcome to Leadership Delivered. I am Fernando Vega. I'm the head of executive search at MSearch, and today I'd like to welcome Brian Hain to the podcast. Brian is our newest team member at MSearch. He's going to be heading up growth. Brian, it's great to connect.
Thank you for the introduction. Thanks for having me on this episode. Excited to talk a little more in depth about leadership.
Awesome, man. No, and I guess Brian, I think it'd be helpful if you can give just a brief intro on yourself and your background, because I think that's going to be really relevant to the conversation. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'll give the professional scope with a dash of personal here. So I have a pretty eclectic, diverse background in business and leadership. Started my career early in sports, and landed at a place where I helped build an organization, a social sport organization, and really learned how to build a business there. Simultaneously, and this was about my mid 20s, I got into triathlon. I was just at the right place at the right time, living in DC, where my triathlon team and experience was growing, and my mentor and coach asked me to become a coach. So I became a triathlon coach at the age of 26. And so I had these parallel paths of coaching triathlon as my side hustle while building a business day to day in my professional life. And it eventually came to a point where I had the opportunity to build my own coaching business. I had moved by this time to Portland, Oregon, and I decided to start a triathlon team in Portland, Oregon, and become a full-time triathlon coach, which I absolutely loved. I miss parts of it still, but I do not miss giving up my weekends to training all the time. So, anyways, from there, I actually had the opportunity through my connections to go to New York and start a co-working business. That's where things really took off from a leadership perspective and a learning how to grow revenue, manage, a multi-million dollar business. I did that co-working business from about 2015 till 2020. COVID hit, and when COVID hit, made the tough decision to take it through reorganization. And I didn't stay in New York. Wanted to head to new pastures. Eventually made my way here to Miami, and I worked in tech. I worked in senior leadership with Anna Maria on our team. We worked at Wix together. Great experience learning inside a larger organization. At the time, I think Wix had 3,000 people. I might be getting that number wrong. But fantastic to learn how tech leaders thought, you know, manage their teams, strategically advance the game. So I had that opportunity to do for about 3 years, and then I rolled that into consulting and helping some smaller businesses, startup level, grow their sales and customer success team, basically focusing on the revenue cycle. And that's where I met you guys at, where I'm landing today. I've come to executive search with no talent and recruitment background, but a lot of business building and talent development from the inside. And yeah, really excited to dive into, the opportunity here to grow something and foster these great relationships.
That's awesome. No, and listen, we're super excited to have you on the team because I think that your background, while being, super non-linear, right, really aligns well with what we do. And believe it or not, even if you don't have direct experience in the space, through everything that you've done, there's so much similarity to what we do. But listen, from coaching to entrepreneurship to tech and now to executive search, Brian, is there anything that you feel is maybe a through line that connects everything that you've done, right? Like, is there a specific thing that you think has really helped you, even when it wasn't as obvious, kind of piece all of these things together?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of a neck and neck thing between deeply connected relationships and community. So, as you heard early on from the triathlon experience, and even that social sport organization that I worked for 8 years, by the way, it was called at the time World Adult Kickball Association. So it was adults playing kickball and eventually volleyball and other sports. That was community building. And so did community building there, triathlon, co-working space, and even within organizations that I worked for, like Wix, and these smaller organizations, it was about building the team and making it feel like not necessarily a family, but close to that work family vibe. But you do that through deeply connected relationships, through good communication, building trust, understanding how people are showing up day to day, whether they're your internal client or they're your external client, and meeting them where they're at. And I find that when you can really understand where somebody's coming from and communicate clearly back to them, what you're seeing and what you're experiencing, and align your goals together, sky's the limit.
Where that comes from, right? So that ability to meet people where they are. Is that something that you think just comes naturally to you, or is that something that you think that you've just learned over time?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely developed, but the basis or the foundation is my personality. I mean, I always love talking, connecting with people. I've always been a talker. I've honed it a little bit more as I've grown through the years, to find times when not to talk, but to find the opportunity where to ask more questions, and insert my thoughts, feelings, and suggestions into a conversation. But I would say largely honing the understanding and connection to the other person of, like, what is this person's perspective? What is Fernando's perspective in this conversation? What does he want to get out of this conversation? Where is he going with his life? Is he thinking about lunch? Is he thinking about his partner? Is he thinking about, the next, the work in front of him for the day, for the next week, and understanding, what makes you you helps us have a better conversation. Or for me, it helps me have a better conversation with you.
I'm curious, is that something that drew you towards this industry? Because I am curious, like, obviously this is very different in a lot of ways. Still, there are some similarities, but very different from what you've done. What was it in particular that drew you towards this, right? Was it the ability to connect with people? Just give me an idea as far as where that idea
Yeah,
came.
I mean, 100%. I like relationship building. I like relating to other humans. I mean, even outside of my work, I actively have community building going on. I have a Friday group that I meet with a bunch of guys, that have been a part of other groups, that I've, helped start or been a part of. And I do that so that we stay closely connected. We help each other, kind of, co-mentoring. And so I like that in my life. I like the idea of coming into work day to day and being able to talk to somebody about, their professional and personal needs, and being able to really understand and problem solve with them. It's exciting to me. Yeah.
Curious. So, since you are coming from a different industry, right? And I've been in this thing for a long time now, so I kind of see it and feel it. I'm in it every day, but I'm curious of how you envisioned this industry before you joined our firm, and I guess what has surprised you, or what maybe has been different about what we do now that you have been with us for a little bit.
Oof, good question. Okay. So the envisioning part, I I generally try not to put together too much of a picture when I'm starting something new. Um, a little bit of that came from the triathlon experience where I had no idea what I was getting into, but being a cocky 20 something year old, I was like, I'll figure this out. I'll be able to, muscle my way through it. And physical fitness, that often comes up. Um, and I was humbled. And I've been humbled a few times since then in a professional manner. So I asked a lot of questions of you, of Tina, of Anna Maria, of others, and kind of painted a picture, but I purposely came in saying, I don't know. There's so much I don't know. I know it's a relationship game. Um, I know from being on the other side how recruiting has worked, at least in my individual experience and some of the companies that I've worked for. Um, so it was kind of, I was trying to treat it as a blank slate. So to answer the what has surprised me part, um, I want to say the biggest surprise so far is how excited and willing people are to talk to me anyways. just just on the concept of, oh, I get to talk, I mean, my network. I get to talk to Brian. Great. It didn't really matter, honestly. I think what I was doing in some cases. I thought I would get more pushback that I've seen in other sales roles, leading sales teams, where it's like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want you to sell to me, or I don't want to hear the pitch. And it's been true not just of my network, but of the kind of larger network, even, new business leads I've had in the first few weeks here, that people are really eager to talk or connect for the most part, or more, I should say, more eager than I've seen in other industries.
Yeah. From the fact that we can help pretty much everybody in some context, right? If you and I were selling patio furniture, and guess what? I'm not in the market for patio furniture. I have no reason to talk to you. And we
Yeah.
get that benefit with what we do, that in some capacity, we can help, right? If you're somebody that is looking to hire for your team, obviously we can help you from that perspective. But if you're somebody that's looking at a career move, and it doesn't have to be a career move right now, right? It can be a career move in 3 months, 6 months, a year. It's good to have these conversations. So it is interesting because you're right. There are a lot of other, let's call it sales roles, right? That people aren't as willing to speak with you, whereas we get that benefit. And I think it's an awesome thing, right? I think that, it's a power that we wield. And I think it's something that we have to be responsible with. And I think it's something that we have to protect, right? Because unfortunately, it is also one of the reasons that, people have had bad experiences with certain, individuals in our space. And I think a lot of that comes from them reaching out in a way that isn't helpful, right? Like, everyone's willing to speak with you, but you've got to make sure that it's worth their time and it's worth their while. So yeah, no, I think it's one of the really cool things about our industry.
Yeah. Can
And
I,
for me,
can
it's
I,
always been
can I
how,
ask you a question? Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, that I was curious because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. If there was something like when you started that you were like, oh, this is a big surprise, or this is, not what I expected. And then kind of the follow up to that is, in your experience, what has shifted and kind of surprised you over time that has stayed consistently true or has changed over the, years that you've been doing this?
Yeah. So my background's interesting because I came from uh, an accounting background. So I was a financial statement auditor, right? And I didn't even know this industry existed when I really fell into it. And, obviously, if you think about the dynamics of an auditor reaching out to you, right? And, from a business standpoint, the auditor walks through the door, no one is happy to see you, right?
No, no, thank you.
But but the response rates are fantastic. So if the auditor comes calling, you're absolutely going to respond to that, right? So,
Yeah.
but it was the level of communication. It was always like, oh God, the auditors are here, right? So it's still like pulling teeth. Like, hey, I need financial documents to prove something, and yes, they have to respond, but they're not going to do it in the way that they want to. So for me, one of the big shifts was the way people now responded to me, because I could offer them something, and I wasn't just here examining your financial statements or auditing your books. It was, hey, I'm reaching out because I can help you with something. So that was a really cool change. I think that one of the things that surprised me about it is, uh, number one, how big of an industry it is, right? Like, again, I didn't know that this thing even existed. So kind of getting into it and then seeing all the different firms and specialties and different areas that you can operate in was really interesting, because I originally got into accounting because I had an interest not in accounting or bookkeeping. I had an interest in business. And believe it or not, the thing that surprised me most about this industry is I've learned more about business doing this than I think I ever could have doing that. right? I could have learned about a very specific business if I was a controller or a CFO for that business, but this has given me broader exposure to everything and every aspect of every business. And that's been really, really cool. And, it obviously takes a long time to really understand these things because there is so many moving parts. And again, there's like surface level understanding and then deep, thorough understanding of something. But the beauty of it is the longer you do this, that layer starts to get a little bit thicker, right? So now it's not just surface level understanding, it's becoming more thorough and more. So you get deeper into all of these industries, you get deeper into, all of these roles and functions, and you get that just through conversation, which is really, really cool. It's something that school can't teach you, right? And I think that's something that makes our industry unique to many others. Obviously you can specialize in one specific area, but uh, I think it's been really interesting to operate in a more general space and really start to broaden the different sorts of searches and companies and people that we work with, because I feel like I've learned a ton, and it's not something that I would have expected coming.
Yeah, I can totally see that already in my time here, where it's an education in and of itself, both at the industry level and the how we can support uh, our businesses that we're helping hire for in so many different ways, and really learn about the intricacies of one individual business or one individual industry, like at a level I never thought I'd learn.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, when you had your own business, how did you look at hiring, right? And what would you consider a successful hire during those times? And has that shifted at all?
Yeah. Oh man, I could go on about this, but so when I worked for the World Adult Kickball Association, that business model was mostly built on volunteers. So each individual league had a volunteer board, like president, vice president, treasurer. It was literally Robert Rules of Order. And I saw how well volunteers worked or didn't work based on basically how much they were invested in what they were doing, how much they were invested in the other people, how much they were invested in the league. And that was a lesson in of itself of like, what are the signals to tell you somebody really wants to do this or somebody's really interested in what they're doing. But fast forwarding to the co-working space, our early hiring practices taught me a lot about really getting better at finding the right people or finding the right fit. I always believed, and I still do to a larger degree, that you never really know until somebody's in the role and they're operating. It's a best guess. And best guesses, if you've been, I imagine if you've been doing it for a while, like your guessing is getting better, your picker is getting better as time goes by. But essentially, I use kind of a basic hiring practice for the co-working space. Go to the network, put out a job post, see what comes back, filter them very loosely or qualitatively, not doing kind of the upfront quantitative work of do they have the skills? Are we testing the skills? Are we doing it checklist style? So the first person we hired for front desk at our co-working space, she didn't have typing skills. Like, she was a hunt and pecker. And we just didn't, we didn't know that's what we were getting until it showed up. And the first, thing you think of is, why didn't I test for typing skills? That should be a basic test. So starting to put in those measures, and then just getting better at what are the screening needs you need before you even start talking to a candidate is what I learned. And then over time, refining the process based on the role, based on the company. And it's different for every role in every company.
So, given that you also come with a tech background, I'm curious, how do you see tech playing a role into that going forward? Right? Is there, do you see a value in it, like a real value?
Yeah, I mean, just what I was saying from a screening perspective, like there, you can automate a lot. You can automate a lot of workflow, but you have to be really careful. I think you have to be really careful and delicate because it's such a relationship-driven concept, and is your process of using AI, potentially not as thought out as it could be, and you're accidentally passing on people because you're screening out people that may be good fits based on one small skill that you haven't rated correctly or haven't built into your prompt or your workflow, whatever tool you're using. I think I was just in San Francisco, and there's all these billboards for the AI tools, and I saw one for Juicebox, and it had on these bus stops, it had like two candidates for different roles, and then it had two or three check boxes for each of them. And like the top candidate would have like three green check marks or two green check marks and like an orange something. And then the other one would have, an X. And the immediate thing I thought is like, I don't know how important that is for the role, but I wonder if they're weighting that. I wonder how much that's weighted, and I wonder who's the human on the other side getting it. And I think to kind of bring it back down to earth, it can help. It certainly can help, but you have to have a human really understanding the capability of the tool and the full functionality of the tool to make sure you're getting the right candidates in front of you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
Do you have a different take? I'm totally.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
no. I think that yes, from a process standpoint, it can help streamline things, right? It can help us move much faster, and I think it actually can open up the pool to people that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily have access to, right? Which I think is a great thing. But I'm also a believer that there are biases built into these things, right? But those biases come from the humans that input the information into it to begin with. So I I think that the pool will still look very similar when it's all said and done, right? Like it may be a bigger pool when you start a search, but I think by the time you get to that kind of last piece of the funnel, it's going to look very similar to what it would have looked like even before AI coming into play. Like the human component is such a big factor here, and I think that inherently we are flawed creatures, right? We make mistakes based off of judgment. You know, we go with our gut all the time, and we're going to continue to do that. Like I don't think AI is going to get rid of that uh, bias or that gut feeling that we go with. I think that the rates of success probably going to look very similar. They may come faster,
Yeah,
but it's
of course.
very similar when it's all said and done because it's still humans making the ultimate decision.
Yeah. Well, if I may add, just so 2 stops ago, when I was helping this e-commerce startup shrink and then grow a team, I was they use Indeed and LinkedIn for job postings, and I would go through. We were only hiring 3 extra people once we scaled back and figured out what we needed. And I would just go through, the applications on LinkedIn and Indeed day by day to see what I had. And I know what my biases are in terms of what I'm looking for. Um, and I'm just thinking about that process of if I had the tools that have just come up in the past few months, I'm using Claude Cowork or Claude Code and trying to implement that into my workflow a little better, speed some things up. If I had that screening, it would have given me back the same candidates. I would have, prompted and said, here's what I want, here's what I don't want. Maybe one or two slip through, but to your point, yeah, you're going to get the same.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the decision maker is still up here, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
so that won't change too much, but no, it's interesting, and obviously there's so much happening out there with AI and just new tech tools. I feel like every week you get a new one, so I'm sure people will find a way to really make the process more seamless. It's going to take some time, and I think at the end of the day, at least in the short term, it's going to look very similar to what it has looked like in the last couple of years. So,
yeah, for sure.
but curious because obviously you come with a sport background. How do you feel that that has impacted your growth as a professional, right? Is there something that you've taken, and I'm sure there's plenty, but I'm curious to hear what specifically you think has really benefited you most from, your prior career, not just as a coach, but even as an athlete?
Yeah, no, great question. I think about this almost on a day-to-day basis as I wake up in the morning and kind of feel how's my body doing? How's my brain? Am I ready to tackle the day? I mean, I have young kids, elementary age kids, and on the days that I have them, it's packed day. I'm driving far to drop them to school, and then got to pick them up and bring them back and get dinner on the table, and obviously all the work in between. And now doing more networking events, which I'm loving. So then there's that evening obligation as well. So I'm saying all that because, specifically as an endurance athlete, you get a really good sense of how sharp your system is over time. This is, I started to really dial things in of how hydrated am I, what's my energy level when I'm running or biking, what's my exertion, is this an easy day for me, a good day for me? There's biometric devices that do this for you now. I know you got a Whoop, so it can tell you, it can tell you or match your biometrics to what you're feeling. But I learned perceived exertion really early on, which is just your ability without looking at your heart rate to be like, okay, this is how hard I'm working, and this is what it feels like. So just having that on a day-to-day basis still informs me what the day is gonna, look like from an energy perspective. And I'm pretty good about managing my energy no matter how I feel in the morning. So I was just telling Anna Maria before this, I got sick in the middle of the night last night. Just random, I don't know if it was food or whatever. And, you get sick and most people are like out for the day, or at least out for the morning. I got up, I went slower. I took the kids to school. I just drank green tea and some water, but I know I really got to hydrate. I really got to move slowly. I got to balance and manage my energy throughout the day and kind of see how I feel. So that's probably the number one thing day to day is kind of energy balance as an athlete. I would say the number two is really that honed skill of relating to other people. So as a triathlon coach, you have to keep people safe. I used to say, we're pulling the leash, we're not pushing you ahead, in endurance, because it's really easy to get burnt out, to get injured. Another way of saying is that we were prescribing an injury to you. We were prescribing, like, the injury is like you're breaking your body down to build it back up, to continue to run further, faster, so on and so forth. And so understanding where the people that you're working with are on a day-to-day basis. Again, this is, you could talk about reading their energy, or just understanding what they need in terms of how you're communicating with them, what they're capable of for the day, for the week, for the quarter, where to push, where to pull, where to give them support. And I am, again, coaching wise, you're a guide. You're constantly supporting and helping people get somewhere. And I see that as my role in every aspect of leadership, whether it's, with the team here or it's with the people that we're helping outside. I'm looking for ways that I can support them, even if they're not hiring us, because guess what? They can eventually hire us, or they can recommend us to be, somebody else's support system for their hiring needs. So you're always looking to provide value, but support in a way that, is logical and truly valuable to that person that you're across from.
Yeah, makes sense. And you mentioned that that is leadership at the end of the day, right? And there's ways to do it indirectly, there's ways to influence, but all of that kind of falls under leadership. So I just want to touch on a couple points with you, and I want to ask you a couple questions around leadership specifically.
Sure.
Let me ask you, what's something that you've had to unlearn about leadership as your career has progressed, right? Is there anything in particular that, maybe turned out to be different than you thought when you were that, mid-20s kind of arrogant athlete, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, I would say it's ego related. It is that, mid-20s thing. So my coach was really great about booming his voice or being the presence when he needed to. And he could always pull back. Especially early on in my professional career and as a coach, I thought I had to assert myself more to be a better leader, to be heard and to be seen, to establish, like, I know what I'm talking about. You need to listen to me. It's more the authoritarian type. I mean, not truly authoritarian, but like adding those elements in, like, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is why we need to do it. This is, we're going, let's go. And so I've just figured out over time that being there's something called service leadership. Being in service of somebody has so much more higher leverage as a leader than being, over somebody and yeah, telling them like, this is how we're doing it. And there are times as a leader where you have to make tough decisions and you have to kind of add a little more assertion to what you're talking about. But it's rare. It's really, at least it's rare for me in the realms that I've worked in. Did that answer it? Did I cover everything there?
Yeah,
Okay.
no. And I think I want to add something to that as well, because we think about when we're kids, when we're young, that authoritarian leadership really is the way that it's just what we're used to, right? You have parents telling you what to do. You have teachers telling you what to do. You have coaches telling you what to do. But I think stepping into leadership as an adult, right? And in a corporate environment, as far as we're on equal setting, right? And I think that that's one big difference from, child to adult. And what I've found, and it seems like common sense, but you don't think about it as much in the moment, especially when you're young, is people respond so much more to what you do than they do to what you say. And I think that that's a big aspect of leadership that young people aren't necessarily taught. You have to figure it out the hard way. Is if you're going to expect people to do something, you need to be doing that yourself, right? And how impactful that is in the real world. And, I mean, I'm sure we've all had coaches, bosses that are really quick to tell people to do things, but then when the time comes, they're not doing those things, and how quickly people lose respect for those individuals and people stop following. So, it's less verbal than I expected when I was a kid. It's far more action based. And I think that that's a really, really interesting thing that I wasn't necessarily aware of when I was younger.
Yeah, no, if I may, I have something to add to that, which thank you for sharing. Is a great point. Um, the being able to put yourself in service of somebody else, and basically not being the authority. There's one thing that I've learned over, I would say, the last 5 years to 7 years that's been game changing for me as a parent and has helped me in my leadership in a professional sense. And it's repair. It's part taking responsibility. So I can say, I messed up, I effed up, I made the wrong call on this tactic. I shouldn't have sent, this message. I shouldn't have said this in this email. As a parent, I shouldn't have raised my voice. I'm sorry. But the repair part is, what are you going to do differently? Or what have you learned from, that mistake? And that's, I mean, from a kid perspective or from like an intimate relationship perspective, it's so powerful. But even, in a professional setting, like being able to give your team the reassurance that what's going on and how to fix it is pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know you mentioned obviously you have kids, right? And I'm sure that leadership with them is probably very different than it is, but I think that there's a lot you can apply to it, right? And with children, I'm sure that something that you think about is legacy, right? And I guess I am curious, whether it be personal, professional, how do you think about legacy and kind of bringing it back to the professional lens as well? I'm curious, like, what would you like to see in 10 years, right? How you're perceived, how this role can help kind of leverage into that.
Yeah. So this has been pretty true throughout my career. The first few times I was asked, what's your 3 to 5 year, what legacy do you want to live or leave? And it's truly that I want to leave people, but I would say more back to the through line, the community, better than I left it. That people have learned something, grown in some kind of way, whether that's from a professional sense, I grew my business. Brian helped me find the best CFO on this planet, or available to me on this planet. And we grew our revenue fivefold. And I have a great relationship with that CFO, or I have a great relationship with Brian and the team at MSearch, and somebody remembers that. And it doesn't need to be, 1,000 people have those experiences, but, enough people have the experience of, I feel really good about, how I'm treated when I talk to Brian or the team at MSearch. And, the same in my personal life. I feel really good about my partner, I'm saying this, my partner saying it about me, or my kids saying about me. My dad will really listen to me and support me, and I know he's got my back no matter what. We have a very short time here. There's amazing legacies out there. I talk about history with my boys. I'm like, we don't remember too much that's 1,000 years ago. There's maybe, a handful of people that we talk about. And I'm like, that's awesome to aspire for it. I'm not driven to like that level of memory, but I'm driven to, I want to leave my mark. I want to make people feel good. And I want to, I want them to remember me with a smile on their face. Yeah.
I can tell you that you're in the right space, because at least from a professional standpoint, we allow people to expand on their legacies, right? Like that's one of the really cool things about what we do is we literally put people in position to grow their legacies and do really cool things. So it's an awesome space, man, and I'm definitely glad to have you on the team.
Oh, thank you.
Uh,
Well, I had the other follow up about, I wanted to hear about your experience with legacy building over the years, because I haven't, it's such a short time, it hasn't started to trickle in yet. But, do you get people coming back to you, like telling you stories of like how far they've gone or how much they've grown? Like, I imagine you do.
See it every day, and it comes in two different ways, right? So when you look at just the individual, and obviously we operate at a different level now, but I think back to my early days when, I was helping people find accountant jobs, right? Senior accountants, staff accountants, and then looking back and seeing that some of those individuals are, corporate controllers, CFOs. Like you could literally look at the LinkedIn path and be like, wow, like, I had at least some role in putting this person in this role, and also you see them climb, and that's really cool. From a leadership standpoint, we've placed individuals that have come into organizations, and then you get to follow the company's growth, right? So which ultimately is tied to their individual legacy. So imagine you put in just a kick-ass sales leader in a company, and then you see that company's ARR grow from 50 million to 100 million to 150 million, and that, hey, like what a cool success story it is for that individual, because now they can go and put it on their resume and say, hey, I helped grow a company from 50 to 200, whatever it may be. But it also means that the company got what they wanted, right? Like they found the right person that allowed them to scale. So and even on a broader scale, you have situations where companies will bring us in to overhaul entire leadership teams, right? It could be a company that maybe has been through, some tough times, and they're looking for new leadership, and seeing companies like that now go through the other side and now become successful and start to thrive because they have the right leaders in place. These are all really, really cool experiences. And again, all speak to the legacy of not just each of those individuals, but also every one of those companies. And we all know, like, listen, a company growing and creating cool things in the world impacts all of our lives, right? Like we've seen it, we feel it. Like look at this thing, right? Like this thing has definitely played an impact on our lives. So all of that kind of speaks to legacy. And again, we're in a unique position where we get to do that 1,000 times a day, right? It's not just a one-time thing. We're not impacting one company, one legacy. We get to impact a bunch of them. And yeah, we play a small role in that, but it's definitely a role that I feel is very, very notable, and can be really cool to be sometimes from the outside looking in at some of these companies that we've worked with and seeing where they go and what they do.
Nice. It sounds marvelous. It feels good, like thinking about the potential for, my time as we move forward. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. The one piece of advice that I'd give is because, and I think this will speak to you as an endurance athlete, right? And I've run a couple marathons. I wouldn't call myself an endurance athlete by any means, but one thing that I found helpful for me was not focusing on the big picture, right? The 26.2 miles and not always looking at, hey, it seems like such a big task. It's always like, hey, can I put one foot in front of the other and take one more step? And I think that from what we do, it can be, if you look at it from a big picture perspective, oh my God, if we place the wrong person and it doesn't work out, it's this huge impactful thing that can impact this company. It's taking the small steps that will lead to the greater success in the long term. And that's the easiest way to get through the day and feel good about everything that we do, because it feels small in the moment, but when you look back at it 10 years from now, you'll realize how big a lot of these actions turn out to be.
Yeah, totally. That actually reminds me, I just saw this clip on her devices on Instagram. The Rich Roll podcast, Chris Paul was speaking. He was talking about stacking days. He was talking about his coach, and he has a son that's pretty short. For those that don't know, Chris Paul's a basketball player that's, I think, like 6', 6'1", and his nickname is Point God. He's like this amazing Hall of Fame point guard, and he's just a hard worker, like a real craftsman at his game. But it was really cool to hear him talk about, stacking days. And that's what we did as endurance athletes. We would just talk about, you just have this workout and you just have to worry about this workout. And it's about stacking workouts. And we used to, when I would get to the day of Ironman as a coach, and I had a room full of 40 athletes in front of me, and we were talking about what was ahead for the next day. It was literally the banquet dinner the night before the Ironman. I would, and I learned this from my coach, so I can't take credit. I would enumerate how many miles they did over the course of that training season. So I just took the training plan, say, we did, or you did 12,000 miles on a bike in this season. You did about 250 miles on foot. You swam, 100 and something miles in the pool. And that's to really personify, that's what happens on the journey. That's the stacking days. That's the time they put in that they're going to go out and put on the course, and there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it, but yeah, that's what it's about.
You can't get to 10,000 hours without starting at one, right? So, listen, Brian, obviously, thank you for taking the time to do this. Welcome to the team. We're super excited to have you. And yeah, man, it was obviously great to learn a little bit more about your background. I definitely got a couple nuggets here that I wasn't aware of, right? So I appreciate you sharing your story, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You've just listened to another episode of MSearch's Leadership Delivered. To learn more and connect with us, click below or head to our website at msearchadvisory.com.